Welcome to the Wrecked by Fiction podcast.
That's not a comfort read.
Yes, it is. Did I read it on my lunch break? Yeah.
So I made notes because I didn't know if there was going to be a quiz.
Hey, everything is for a grade. While I was watching a movie with my 6-year-old, yeah. I didn't know I could be both right and so fucking wrong. Wrecked by Fiction, where we read, cry, and question our emotional stability. Hey. So this is Emma with Wrecked by Fiction, and I couldn't wait to have somebody to talk to about this book. I am late to the game. There's something like 88,000 reviews for this book on Amazon or Goodreads or whatever. And I am so fucked up about it. So it's Pen Pal by JT Geissinger. We'll go with that. I'll put it on the screen. But even with all of the reviews, I chose to not read any of them. It was all over, Book Talk, and there was so many reviews from people that I know who have read the book, and I went in super blind. So I don't like to read a lot of mainstream that isn't fantasy, and so I typically choose lesser known indie authors, and so I stay away from like the really big hyped books on Book Talk, and so I hadn't read Pen Pal, and that was a mistake. This book, I would classify it as like dark romance, maybe even like a paranormal thriller romance. But that's after reading it. Before, I probably just dark romance with any sort of like little information you get at the very beginning. And I started this book last night at like 10:30 p.m. and I work a full-time job and have 3 kids, 2 of whom which live at home full-time. And I finished it, 10 minutes ago, and it is 8:54 p.m. So less than 24 hours with a busy life. And this book, I couldn't stop. Did I read it on my lunch break? Yeah. Did I read it when I went to the bathroom at work today? Yeah. While I was making dinner? Yeah. While I was watching a movie with my 6-year-old before she went to bed? Yeah. I had no idea what was happening. I was so hooked that I couldn't stop. And I'm nearing the end. I think I'm sitting at like 88%, and my husband looks at me and he's making fun of me because he thinks I'm crying, but he doesn't know that I'm crying. And then he turns the lights on and he sees that I'm actually crying. And he's like, "Oh my God, it really is making you cry." And I was like, yeah, I don't know what came over me, but something about the relationship in this book just hit me really hard. You've got Aiden and Kayla, and they have this like whirlwind romance situation. And something about the way that they fall for each other just like gutted me. And before I go spoilery, I shouldn't have waited to read this book. I waited too long. It was worth it. It was worth it. It's my first 5-star read of 2026. For sure. If you could rate higher than that on Goodreads, I probably would. But spoilers for Pen Pal incoming. I don't know what I thought the book was about, but definitely not what it was actually about. So when you get into it, Kayla gets her husband dies, and she's grieving, and she gets a mysterious letter that shows up in her house from a man named Dante. And she is missing parts of her memory. There are like time lapses in her memory that she has no idea what's going on. So she's like, oh, maybe I brought the mail in. That letter didn't just appear in my house. And the roof on her house leaks, and she calls a roofer, and no one ever shows up. But then she finally gets somebody, and Aiden shows up. And he is the opposite of this woman's dearly departed husband. And she is so annoyed that she thinks he's attractive. And she's also annoyed because he's kind of annoying and rude. And she haggles with him, and they come to a price on fixing her roof. And then he's like doesn't really communicate with her, and she ends up firing him. But then a week later, she gets scared in her house all on her own and randomly shows up at his house in the middle of the night, or his apartment in the middle of the night. And he takes her in, and then they end up having what was supposed to be a one-night stand. And she doesn't understand what's going on with her. Her brain is all sorts of muddy and has holes in it, and she can't really find a solid grasp on the reality that she's living. And you go through the book, and there's their relationship and her communications with her housekeeper, and what she believes to be like weird, strange happenings. And then her housekeeper says, oh, maybe you have a ghost in your house, and we should call my sister and do a seance. And Kayla's like, that's fucking insane. Ghosts aren't real. Why would we do that? That doesn't make any sense. And so instead of like agreeing with her, she kind of brushes off her house cleaner, and she ends up like trying to see a therapist, but sees a psychic instead, which is a choice, I guess. And so she goes to a psychic, and the psychic gives her a really weird like tarot reading, and she doesn't know what to think of it or how to make sense of it because it's not something that she's ever experienced before. And she draws all these cards, and half of them are upside down. And if you know anything about tarot, you know that when a card is drawn and it's placed upside down, when you first draw it, it has a slightly different meaning than when it's drawn and it's placed right side up. And so she gets these tarot card pulls that basically tell her she needs to move on. She has a journey that she's on, and she kind of has to let go of her past and in wanting to move forward. And the third card she pulls is death. But the death card is one of the ones that is placed upside down, away from her. And she doesn't understand, and she asks the psychic, oh my God, if that's the death card, but it's placed upside down, so that means means life, right? Like, she's trying to kind of rationalize and create meaning where there isn't any. And the psychic's like, no, I mean, the death card is easily misunderstood in general. And when people draw it, they assume the worst. But really, the death card, you can take it literally, but more than likely it just means like rebirth and new beginnings and starting over and things like that. And so Kayla leaves this psychic medium woman with more questions and answers than when she went in there. And so she finally agrees with her housekeeper to call the sister and have her come and do a seance because her house is haunted. Her cabinets are being left open. She's seeing a little boy sprinting and running and laughing and cannot figure out what is going on. A coin that's left on the steering wheel in her car, and she finds it out by the lake behind her house, and so many things that she cannot explain. And as the reader, you don't get any insight. You find things out as Kayla is finding them out. And so I was on the edge of my seat, and I'm like, girl, Kayla, we got to figure this out because you're fucking suffering. And so I was like, I'm in it. I'm piecing it together, right? Or so I thought. And my first assumption is she's getting these weird letters, right, from Dante. And then Aiden the roofer, who they, magically meet and fall in love, one night stand, but it's not a one night stand. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, oh, the letters are Aiden, because that's what makes sense to me. I'm like, he's been in her home, so like the letters magically appearing are there because of him. And I didn't know I could be both right and so fucking wrong at the same time until I finished this book. Because the letters are Aiden, but not really, because they do the seance and the sister talks to Claire, the sister talks to the spirit and connects with the spirit, and they're sitting there and Kayla is freaking out and she's kind of like chanting like the word no and screaming, and she gets up and runs out of the room because the spirit is like knocking and giving answers and saying that they want revenge for whatever happened to them, and Kayla gets up and runs out of the room. And the housekeeper and the sister, they find her in her kitchen, like crouched on the floor, and all the cabinets and doors are open in the kitchen. And they come in and they're like, "Why are all your cabinets open?" And she's like, "Oh, I didn't do that. The house did that." And they are like gently leading her somewhere. But I didn't know what was going on. I was like, something insane is happening and I couldn't see it. And all of a sudden, Kayla has this like fucking epiphany that I couldn't have seen coming, even if it hit me in the face, which it did, maybe literally. And Kayla realizes that her ghost is Dante, right? The person, the spirit haunting her home is Dante. Okay. I get it. We kind of got there as a team, right? And then, but that doesn't make any sense because Kayla's been seeing a little boy and a man with a trench coat and a hat pulled down so she can't see his face. And the man with the trench coat has been like, she's been seeing him out in the town too, and she didn't understand how all of those things could be related. And she even asks these women, is it possible that they're all connected? Because she couldn't grasp what was going on. And so she recalls a line from the last letter that Dante sent her, where Dante told her, "You are the storm. The thunder and the lightning and the rain are a response to whatever is going on with you. You are creating the chaos." And it hits her. Kayla is the fucking ghost. Kayla is the one haunting this home. All of the cabinets and the drawers are open because Kayla has not been able to move on. She is the one who died. Her memory of her husband dying isn't real. These memories of she's walking through her life and she sees this small child running and she's like, "Oh my God, that small blonde child that's the ghost." No, that small child, it belongs to the family who bought her house after she died. And she runs back up into what used to be her husband's office. And she finds a newspaper article and she opens it because she had only ever read the top and it just said, "Local man drowns." And she could never bring herself to open it. She was like, "I've never seen that before. The housekeeper must have placed it there." And she opens it and the actual title reads, "Local man drowns wife." And there's a picture of her underneath. And had she just opened it, she would have realized far earlier that he wasn't the one that died. She did. And she has been floating through this altered reality state situation that she created. And she was confused, and everything kind of starts piling on, and she is having flashback memories of like everything is clicking, and it's clicking for Kayla at the same time it's clicking for the reader. And I was so shocked. I don't know. I haven't read a book that has shocked me so thoroughly. Maybe since, I don't know, 2.5 years ago, I read Crossed Over by Santana Knox, and that's a book for another fucking day. But Jesus, those books where you think you know what's going on and then you don't, and you really, really, really don't, are the reason that I fucking read in general, but like specifically books that I know are gonna fuck me up, right? And going into Pen Pal, I didn't know that I was gonna be so fucked up. I was sobbing, snot running down my face, probably mascara. I don't know what I look like right now because I finished the book and then I sat down. But good God. And the sweetest thing is that she essentially like wakes up, right? After all this realizations, and she kind of explodes and the house windows shatter in the home because of her energy and the chaos that she has created. And she wakes up and the home is as the new owners have created. And you can look back on and see that her housekeeper and the housekeeper's sister have been gently as possible, leading her to figuring out herself that she was the one that died, that it was never her husband. And in reality, her husband killed her and killed Aiden. Her memories, her like time spent with Aiden where he comes and fixes her roof and they have a one night stand that turns into not a one night stand and they fall in love. All of that is real, but it's the past. It happened before she died. And so she's living with these like lapses in her memory because she's got the past replaying while she's living her current life as a ghost, and they're all happening on top of each other. And her spirit is wildly confused, and so she can't find the holes. Like, she couldn't figure out what was going on, and that's why it made no sense to her. And everything was layered on top of each other. And so everything that happened with Aiden really did happen, but it did not happen when she thought it happened. And she wakes up and the doorbell rings and she goes down to get it. And she opens the door and Aiden is there, and he says, "Hey, bunny, did you miss me?" And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm dying. I'm sorry. What? I cannot believe I didn't know that I didn't know. That I didn't know what was going on. And I'd like to say that I'm pretty smart. I'd like to think so. But sometimes these books, I don't catch it. These books catch me so off guard that I'm just like smacked upside the head with the truth by the end of it. And oh my God, I can't. So anyway, Pen Pal's really good. I will be recommending it to many, many people. I have a friend who her preference is psychological thrillers. And I think it's the perfect like mesh of my preference, which is romance, or I like dark romance. But I also just like romance in general. I'm pretty kind of spread out all over the board. And I think it meshes really well with that like psychological fuck with your brain piece, as well as the thriller and the violence and the actual love story. And on the ebook, at the end, there is a fucking list of discussion questions. Like, if you have this as your book club book, and the top question is, do you think it's a happily ever after? Do you think that Kayla and Aiden got an HEA? And I gotta say, yeah, because death doesn't mean that they don't get to be together. It doesn't mean that their stories, wrapped up when they both died. He found her at the end. He came back for her when she finally realized and she was able to see through the fog and the confusion surrounding her spirit after she died. He found her again. And that's all you need for an HEA. It doesn't have to be real life. It doesn't have to be perfect or pretty or non-traumatic. They just have to be together. And Aiden and Kayla got theirs. I think so. Read it. It's really good. I read it on my Kindle, but it since it's the first 6-star read of 2026, it might be a trophy book situation. I might need to find a paperback copy. So, okay. See you the next time that I cry about a book on my couch in the middle of the night. I love you.